Hello and welcome to the 12th edition of e-Dialogue series organized by Urban Update and All India Institute of Local Self-Government along with USLG ASPAC. Government of India has unveiled recently a Environmental Impact Assessment 2020 draft proposal. Post Bhopal gas disaster, proposals were made and took 10 years to notify the country to its first EIA norms in 1994, setting norms to regulate activities that access, utilize, and affect natural resources. The norms have gone through many changes since then, and now we have a new draft proposal in front of us with many drastic changes. So today, let's debate on EIA 2020, environment and citizenry. And we have a very eminent panel to discuss it. On the program, Mr. Stalin Dayanand, founder director of Vanashakti NGO, also a leading face of the RA movement in Mumbai. Mr. Vimlendu Jha, executive director, Sweksha, a leading environmentalist of the country, need no further introduction. Mr. Bhavesh Singh, he is environmental coordinator, Akhvi Consultants. Ms. Abhilasha Srivastav, she is a former research biologist of Wildlife Institute of India and a current researcher on the environmental policies of the country. Mr. Leo Saldanha, he is a trustee with Environment Support Group, a leading activist who works with many marginalized groups. And Colonel Chepudira Mathaina, president of Kurk Wildlife Society. A very eminent panel. Let me give first word to Vimlendu. Vimlendu, you have been arguing for an environmental policy that suits the citizenry, that does not affect the poor, marginalized section of the society. How do you assess the new EIA 2020 proposal, draft proposal, and how you think it is going to benefit the citizenry or it is detrimental?
I think EIA draft 2020, there's no question whether it is actually going to help the environment. It is in every possible way detrimental to our environment and is detrimental to people and public health. And there are various reasons. In your introduction, you actually said the entire genesis of environment impact assessment or environmental governance regime that we're talking about since 1984. So when we actually had a Bhopal gas tragedy, and then within 2 years, we actually had an Environment Protection Act, then the provisions of environment impact assessment that came in 94 and in 2006 and so on and so forth. So if you look at a country that is anyway has a very fragile environmental governance system, we are actually almost in the environment, global index, we are almost 177 out of 180 countries. We all know the quality of air that we actually are breathing in most of the cities, including Delhi and metros, the kind of water crisis that we're talking about. And therefore, when we in last 5 years or 10 years have actually witnessed a heightened state of environmental emergency in the country, therefore the need should be actually to strengthen the existing norms and regulations, to strengthen our environment and the connection between environment and public health. Rather than doing that, what this particular notification or EIA draft that will actually become a law eventually says is that no, as in Ease of doing business is more important. In democracy, people and their voice vis-a-vis environmental projects is not important. It's as if there's no connection between environment and public health. So it's a very disastrous draft, I would say. I would say that it's actually a compendium of violations. It almost is a book that could be, rather than titling it Environment Impact Assessment Draft 2020, it should be a book or titled How to Kill the Environment, because it actually every point really states ways, it gives method to the corporation or method to the state how to really plunder the environment. And of course, during the course of today's discussion, we'll actually talk about what are those points that we're talking about. Like, you know, how there are several category of industries which are extremely polluting, which are in red and orange category industries that have actually been taken out of the realm of public consultation and environmental clearance. And these industries, mind you, are chemical industries, are river valley projects, are mining projects, are solar parks, a lot of industrial estates that will be established. So imagine categories of industries that are proven to be hazardous for people and environment. They are supposed to get, they don't need environment clearance anymore. Protected areas that are anyway extremely vulnerable, now you can actually build highways and elevated roads inside these protected areas. The buffer zone, which was supposed to be 10 kilometers, has now been reduced to 5 kilometers. The mining lease that was supposed to be only valid for 30 years is now extended till 50 years. You know, imagine the permission, you can actually seek a post facto environment clearance. So basically, if I'm a polluter, I can start with a project. If I'm a proponent of a factory, I can start with a project without even asking for any environment clearance or environment permission. So we've seen a great degradation of environmental governance, and I should, I'm sure I'll you'll come back to me for more detailed
sure.
But
Hold
I
on
just
to your
make
thought.
last point before you go to someone else, is that just 4 days ago, we actually had the Sterlite judgment that came out, the Sterlite copper judgment of Tuticorin. And that's a burning example. Imagine when we had the law and that law wasn't enforced, and still we were able to create a situation, a disaster situation called Sterlite Copper. And we ended up killing people, 13 people who were actually protesting on the 100th day. Imagine what kind of a governance will we actually have when we don't even have a law. So when we had a law, we created the monster, we killed the citizens who opposed it, and when we don't have a law, or if the law doesn't mandate people to oppose, if it tells corporations that you can increase, do whatever that you can, there's no violation, it's going to be a banana republic.
Hold on to your thoughts. I'll certainly come back to you, Vimlendu. Stay with us. Mr. Bhavesh Singh, you heard Vimlendu on various aspects of this new draft proposal. Is it for environment or is it for development? Your thoughts?
Development. It is absolutely for development. It is regressive departure from the 2006 notification. Actually, see, it should be as per World Bank and ADB. They are asking environmental clearance EIA report for the transmission line and for the railway, but it was not mentioned in even 2006. Now they are reducing it to extension projects. Earlier in 2006 it was 30. Now they modified it to 100 extension project for highway, 100 kilometer. Now they are saying that 100 kilometer, they are extension projects to be removed from the airport should be exempted from the EIA clearance. So what is happening if you are there, NHI and other development, NHI DCL and MOD, etc. They are what they are doing? If the highway is about 200 kilometers.
भवेश जी आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, थोड़ा माइक से नजदीक आके बात करिए.
Actually, if your highway is 200 kilometers length, then what is happening? The NHI or MOD or NHI DCL, they are doing their dividing it into parts. It is going to be 80 kilometer, 85 kilometers. Then they are taking advantage that EIA is not required, environmental clearance is not required. If you are saying that more than 100 kilometer, it is EIA environmental impact will be there. But if it is divided into three parts, there will be no environmental impact. It's quite, how can I explain it? It is quite difficult to explain it that they are saying that there is no environmental impact over there. We have to not take the environmental risk. They are exempting it. If you are taking mining projects or area for linear projects, they have exempted from the this environmental clearance. But if so many rural areas they are going to operate for the highways or for the railways, and they are saying that rural areas on the environment.
Bhav- Bhaveshji, I will ask my colleague to speak to you and fix the audio issue. My colleague will be speaking to you and fix it. Okay. Uh, Let me go to Abhilasha. Uh, Abhilasha, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. You have been a biologist, researcher on environmental issues and all that. In your assessment, the new draft proposal, how it is going to affect the citizenry, the marginalized, uh, the cities which are already struggling with me, because environment has many dimensions. It is pollution, it is transportation, it is amalgam of many things. So how do you look at it?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
So, first of all, I would like to thank you for calling me over here. And in last 2.5 years, I've been working as a part of WII's Tiger Project, and it has given me a chance to work in forest area of India, various tiger reserves of India. And today, in 2020, when I see environment impact assessment draft coming, what concerned me, and our topic is also very much interested in the citizenry and environment. As a citizen of India, our constitution grants us various rights, and very fundamental right is right to clean environment, which is a very basic human right. That you have right to breathe clean air, you have right to drink clean water, and every um, every pollutant or every processes that happen uh, in, uh, in environment, especially if we talk about EIA, which is basically a tool that sees whether it is a tool to identify environmental, social, and economic impact of projects prior to its decision making. That if you want to implement a project, what will be its negative and the positive impacts. Now we know that various industries keep on polluting our environment. They release number of pollutant in environment, and then that really affect not just the local weather, but it has a global impact. All our local processes basically impact on a global level, and the entire monsoon pattern and different environmental processes are too much linked together that a, a process or a company that is basically violating the environmental norms at a particular area might affect us at a larger level. You know that Delhi in April has started BS6 vehicles, which is going to reduce the pollution level, which basically not just the nitrogen but the sulfur compounds will be reduced, which are emitted by the vehicles. So we see that how if air is polluted, it directly affects the entire economy of a city, and it not just affects the health of the people living in that city, but it affects the very processes that are directly linked, and not just in cities, but you see that, for example, if we try to understand this by an example, like a coal power plant is working in particular area. The coal power plant cannot be happen in air. You have to clear the forest area. And what are forests? Forests are the biggest sink of carbon dioxide, which is the one of the major global warming gas, one of the greenhouse gas responsible for the global climate change. And how climate change is affecting the entire economy, we already know. It affects the agriculture, it affects the water bodies, it affects the wildlife of our country. And it is very much, therefore it is very much important to understand the entire EIA by connecting it with the different processes of environment that happen, that really happens. So and I see this particular draft at the time when we actually needed a strict law in order to safeguard the entire environment. But what we see that it's not just this law, but in last 10 and 15 years, and even before that, how this law has been violated, misused for the benefit of business and the corporate houses, as the previous Vimlendu sir has already told in detail about that. I will not go into detail, but I would like to mention two major events that happened in our country in last few months. That is Visakhapatnam gas leak and the Assam oil spill, and how it has devastated the entire habitat in Assam, and how hundred of animal has lost their life. It has destroyed the aquatic ecosystem of Assam. And Visakhapatnam also, how people have lost their life, how it has made people pay by their health. And we do not need more example. We have hundreds and thousands of example how different companies, whether it's Jindal Steel in Chhattisgarh, Adani Mundra Sez plant in Gujarat, or the Nirmal Cement plant in Gujarat, or the Haryana, the recent example of Haryana oil refineries, where NGT has penalized them for 25 crore. So a regular violation of this tool has happened in our country. In such time when we actually was needed a strict law, what we see is another weakening of the law. And this is not just going to hamper the environment. The biggest effect on the recent draft, I think, if for that detail, if you come back to me, we'll be discussing that detail in further.
Hold on to your thought, Abhilasha. I will come back to you
Yeah.
on this issue again.
Yeah.
Mr. Stalin, what Abhilasha has said is really strong words. It's what we need, a strict law, but this law is weakening our environmental concerns. You have been at the forefront of RA movement in Mumbai. How do you look at this law? Does it give cities a chance to get their environment back, a clean air, a clean transportation, and a breathing space?
Thank you for having me over, and good morning to everyone. I would like to show one slide. Ms. Abhilasha has mentioned about the duty, about the rights of the Indians. I would like to take that one step further. So if you permit me, I will do that.
Yeah.
So my contention is that this law, can you see my slide?
Yeah, I can. Yes, we can.
Yeah. You can. So my contention is that this law or this draft EIA in 2020 is completely unconstitutional. We talk of rights, let us know our duties also. What is the duty as per the Constitution of India? Article 48 says the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forests and wildlife of the country. The Wildlife Protection Act also strengthens Article 48. Now, what are the duties of the citizens? for citizens, it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So here we are clear on what are our rights and what are our duties. This law is completely unconstitutional. It removes people from the equation. It does not allow people to voice their concerns or even take part in this process. So fundamentally it is flawed. Tell me one thing I would ask all my co-panelists here, and also to anyone in the legal fraternity, under which provision of the law can the Environment Ministry clear projects? The mandate of the ministry is to protect. They have no authority. They have no authority under the constitution to give permission to cut down or destroy the environment. Now we have signed the Rio Convention. We are a signatory to it, an international convention where we say we promise the world that in the matters of environment, we will apply the precautionary principle. Where is the precautionary principle in this draft EIA 2020? It is sanctioning, it is condoning, it is encouraging more and more violations. It is telling the industry, go ahead and do what you want. You pay peanuts as fine and continue on your ways. And it has clipped the wings of the people in this participatory democracy where people's duty under the constitution is to protect. We cannot do it. And it is a systematic, this situation has been systematically arrived at. Over the years, they have weakened institutions that were protecting. They kept changing the laws. And let me tell you, this is not restricted to the present government. The earlier government was also guilty. It kept the loopholes in those systems. Now, what this government has done has made those loopholes legal. They have just said, go ahead. For example, for townships, 20,000 square meters was the restriction. And if beyond that, you would have to go to the central government. What this government is saying, you do 1,50,000 square meters, no issues. So there is no need for any, hanky-panky. One has just worsened and legalized whatever loopholes were there in the earlier notification. So here we have a situation where fundamentally it is unconstitutional, it is illegal, and it destroys people's rights. And that is why this draft cannot stand the test of law in any court of law.
Right. Right, Mr. Stalin. Let me take this to Colonel Chepudira, who is president of Coorg Wildlife Society. Sir, you heard many views. It's unconstitutional, anti-citizen, everything. Where are you based and the Wildlife Society that you head? We have seen many man and wildlife conflict. A lot of elephants have died.
Yes.
Abhilasha was talking about it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So how do you look at it as an environmentalist, that a place like Coorg, which has been so beautiful, wonderful, has a wonderful wildlife life as well, how it will affect in the years to come the entire region?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, and good morning to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Very
Please
good.
Okay. At the outset, I would like to say that I am not pro-BJP or anti-BJP, pro-Congress or anti-Congress.
Absolutely.
I am only very subjective in my assessment of environmental matters to the extent I can be. And I have been an activist and have been responsible for getting a stay on 2 railway lines and 7 national highways that would have ripped across Kodagu, the principal catchment of River Kaveri. Having said that, I want to stress that when we look at the draft EIA notification 2020, we should not look only at it. We should look more deeply into it and around it. When I say that, I mean that I am afraid that we are heading for a very dangerous situation where we are heading for an authoritarian regime. And there, the first sign of that is that we have Mr. Prakash Javadekar as the Environment Minister and also the Minister for Heavy Industries. Now, I'm sure this was not the decision of Prime Minister Modi himself. Vested interest groups are able to influence our government today. And it is vested interest groups who have convinced the Prime Minister that you must have the same minister in charge of heavy industries and environment, because environment and forest clearances are coming in the way of industries and in the way of the country's progress towards becoming a developed nation. That is point one. Point two, there is a systematic effort to dilute the democratic process and democratic norms, and therefore by weakening the process of public consultation. Now, one very, very dangerous situation arises here, where they have said earlier, all projects which were for under defense, for defense related projects were kept out of the purview of the public domain, and therefore outside RTI and therefore outside judicial process. Now they have got other strategic considerations. What are other strategic considerations? Tomorrow, in my mind, the most dangerous project that will really may destroy this country is the massive river interlinking project. So the government can well say that this is a strategic project to protect the country from the vicious cycle of floods and drought. And therefore, we will not put the details on the public domain, so there is no RTA and nobody can go to court. I want to say in this regard, in fact, I have put the RTI, I'm waiting for, I hope I'll get the reply. What happens when the Himalayas ice and snow cover melts greatly and you do not have enough water to feed the river interlinking project, whereby you have constructed hundreds and thousands of dams, canals, irrigation systems? What happens then? At a cost of thousands of lakhs of crores, where the country will get into a debt trap. So I feel, and again, it will rip through migration corridors and further worsen the human-elephant conflict situation in this country. So this is what I have to say for now. I have got some other points, but I'll come to that later.
Okay, thank you. Well said. Let me take this to Vimlendu. Vimlendu, there are so many questions that the panelists have raised, but I want your response on two specific issues. One is that the post facto permission, that you start the project and you can seek the permission later on without any EIA clearance and all that. And the second is that what has been said, that is, it is unconstitutional, it is against the constitution, it's illegal to force this law. Your thoughts on that, these two issues?
See, about the second point first, as in, of course, as what Stalin said, that, eventually when this actually goes to the court of law, it will be challenged. But we also know the way this government and many governments operate, as in they always find a way, a shortcut to really, circumvent the process of law. And that's how many such exploitative, abusive, laws have actually come in place in that sense. So second point, as in that is for future, let's see what exactly, because after so much pressure from civil society and citizens, after the Minister Prakash Javadekar filing UAPA charges on people who had filed these cases, finally, just a day before the last date of submission, he said that he's going to take into cognizance the feedback, whatever 2 lakhs or 20 lakh feedback that he's actually received, he's going to really take that into account. So hope he takes into account all the voices, because usually it doesn't happen. I mean, usually this entire public consultation process is a sham. So earlier, anyway, it was a sham, as no public consultation. Public consultation delayed processes, but eventually the government did what it wanted to do. So, and right now what they've gone one step forward. They said, oh, forget about even this provision of public consultation. We won't even consult you because the law doesn't allow any public consultation in that sense. So about the second point, let's see how that unfolds and perhaps our legal minds.
I'm sorry, I'm disrupting you, but government claims that it has received some 17 lakhs comments and reviews.
Absolutely. So that's why I'm saying that, some officers say 2 lakhs, some officers say 20 lakhs. They know what is the best figure in that sense. And the fact that it's your topic today is environment impact assessment and citizenry. The fact that during times of COVID, when the document wasn't even translated in local languages, and when there is a certain digital divide in our country, if we still had, and the draconian authoritarian regime that we have, if still 17 to 20 lakh people opposed something as tricky as this, because what they've done is they've pivoted all of this to this new India image, that new India which has flyovers and thermal power plants and solar parks and highways, and so common aspirational Indian thinks that perhaps a highway is more important than a forest. So they don't understand that when thousands and lakhs of hectares of central India's forests that will be given away for coal, you would think that India will find progress. No, a certain Adani or an Ambani or a Vedanta or an Agarwal will actually be able to gain most profit. And that's the reason why these people, if over one generation, some of the richest people that we're talking about in our country, if they have become rich over one lifetime through actual, plunder and crony collusional form of corruption, that is what this does. This mainstreams the entire form of corruption. And, a couple of days ago, by the way, I was on a panel conducted by Professional Congress. And I said, and someone asked me that, can there be a green politics in India? And my response to this is no. As in every political party today, the same people that we're talking about who are actually taking the biggest miners or the biggest exploiters or violators of our environment are these 3 people or 3 names that I took just now. And they are the biggest funders of the current dispensation or the current political party. But before this, 6 years ago, they were the biggest funders of the Congress party also. So it's the same. At the end of the day, hamam mein sab nange hain, and the system is corrupt, and they just want to exploit the entire thing. So right now, when we're talking about public consultation not allowed and how the state is authoritarian, imagine the number of cases that were actually filed by P. Chidambaram when he was a home minister and calling every protester and every tribal a terrorist. So this entire anti-Naxal law formation in our country also happened during the regime of Congress. So therefore, we cannot say, oh, well, Congress is one doodh ka dhulawa and BJP is the most criminal political party. No, they all are opportunists and they all are plunderers. They're all into profiteering. And that's the second part. Now, the first part about post facto, exactly. Like imagine, anyway, we all people, Stalin and some of us who actually do different kind of advocacy. One is policy-based advocacy, which is ground up and which is actually basing our study on data and research and therefore creating a public opinion. And the other is legal advocacy, where actually we go and knock on the door of the court and say, oh, well, hello, Supreme Court, hello, High Court. See, this is legal. And in more than 100 cases, what happens in these cases that people like Stalin and everyone else, or myself or others contest. By the time that you reach the court, say it says it's too late. Ab to wo building ban gaya. That dam is ready. State has already spent so much money. It's a loss. Like, there's a technical word that Stalin will tell you for that. What is it called? I don't know. There's a word for it. So because the World Trade Center is already made, they've already, what they've done, they have collapsed all the buildings. They've broken down all the buildings of Sarojini Nagar, Nairoji Nagar, East Kidwai Nagar, before the environment clearance was actually challenged. Imagine a mammoth structure in South Delhi called East Kidwai Nagar that is built near All India Institute of Medical Science. Their environmental impact assessment report is a cut copy paste of Tamil Nadu. But they ended up building it. There was a provision in law for EIA, but they hired a consultant, and consultant, by the way, was not an independent body, that was paid by the project proponent. And that project proponent actually did, brought some deer and cows and rivers of Tamil Nadu and pasted it. It was presented in the High Court, and High Court reprimanded that entire study, but couldn't do anything. It said, oh, well, itna paisa kharch ho chuka hai. All the money of the state has been spent. And in most cases, this is what actually happens. And when you actually make post facto clearance a law, that means that, oh, well, you can actually do whatever that you want. Your license is to do 50,000 tons and you're doing 100,000 tons. And then you can still go and apply and say, oh, well, I'm self-declaring that I pollute. Now tell me what is the penalty. And that's why I was bringing the example of Sterlite. Sterlite was actually for their crimes that Supreme Court accepted from 94 to 2006 or 96 to 2006, I don't remember the exact dates, they were penalized 100 crore rupees because they had circumvented, lied and misrepresented. Then can you just pay 100 crores and it is what? One contract, mining contract for them. They pay 100 crores and 40% of copper of India is owned by that Vedanta Sterlite company in that sense. So it's very easy. It's almost like rent-seeking mafia that we're talking about, where the state is the biggest rent seeker. And now you want to take that law, which was anyway compromised, out of the entire environmental governance regime. So it's very, very, very dangerous in that sense, where the last word will be of the polluter. The last word is not of the state.
Hold on to your thoughts, Viblendu. I'll come back to you. Let me take this to Stalin. What kind of problem that you faced when there was, in Bombay, we know that how environmental laws are, flouted and projects are given clearance during the array for movement also. We saw that court also took a very lenient view on this. When it came to Supreme Court, what Viblendu was talking about it, the government said whatever trees had to be cut has been done. What do you do now?
Yeah, so this is
take a cognizance of a situation. Things are already done. What do we do in that situation in the civil society?
Exactly. Now in the EIA 2020, there is a provision which says that you can start fencing and leveling even before applying in the NGT. Let me show you the ground situation. We told the court that there is a lot of damage which is happening. I'll just show it to you. 1 second. What was happening was, they said there is no need. This is the site for the metro car shed. This was the site when state of the place when we went to court. So when they said they had put up barricades and they said, no, we are only doing fencing and leveling. And this is the fencing and leveling what they have done. You can see what has happened to that entire landscape. The river streams, so many rivulets which were going into the Mithi River, all of it completely buried. Okay, and all this happens behind barricades. So basically here the EIA notification, which they are trying to bring in, allows you to permanently damage a landscape. So whatever natural features of the land are there will get completely altered. So by the time the court wakes up and that's the wrong word, not wakes up, takes cognizance of the issue, the landscape has changed. And then the excuse is that what can we do? What can we do? Now this is another example of a place which they said they built a wall, a 2 square kilometer wall around this wetland. This was in 2013. And they said they're just doing leveling and fencing. And see, this is what was leveling and fencing, burying the mangroves inside the fenced areas. Okay, so what happens is finally everything goes changed. Now in 2020, nothing remains there. All water bodies, all wetlands completely gone. It also, this EIA also provides you to take away land and keep it with you without doing anything. Now, if you see the wall in the background here near the tower, see here the wall. These are all areas which are marked for an SCZ. These lands were given 15 years ago. These are all wetlands and nothing has happened to them. are changing the law to allow real estate construction on these lands. This is how these lands are leveling happens. Now, what is this leveling? So basically the of people from the entire process. So we need to be very careful here what we are doing. The game is what you call, like Mr. Vimlendu said, we are completely being sidelined. You cannot see what's happening. Why? What is the need? If it is fencing, why can't it be barbed wire fencing? People will know what is going on inside the site. It doesn't happen. Either someone builds a wall or they raise those huge tin sheets where you cannot see anything inside. Trees are cut, land is flattened, everything. So in RA, the same thing happened. By the time the court has taken cognizance, that too after such a national hue and cry, the corporation is they have cut 2,100 trees for making a service center, which is wrong again, because we verified the facts on the ground. They have cut only 300 trees, but to defeat the people, went around telling the court, no, we have cut 2,000 trees. Now, if the court had accepted that they have cut 2,000 trees, then we have nothing to fight for. The people would go back. The fact is that 2,000 trees are still there in that RA plot. The forest is still standing. Hardly anything has been lost there. So the battle continues. But again, how do you fight this system which keeps pulling you down at every level? The narrative which was sold and accepted by the people before
एयरटेल का खराब हो गया क्या?
2004. People who are bringing down the economy, a few people have made money. The country has lost valuable natural resources. Wildlife areas are lost, and rivers are lost. Pollution is on the rise. And what kind of environment are we giving our children? What do the next generation look forward to? So basically, this thing, since our discussion on EIA 2020, I'm again and again saying that this is not a law. Any law which makes an exception ceases to be a law. That's my simple understanding. If you say, no, you can do it, but he cannot do it, then it is not a law. Okay, the only maximum consideration which we may accept, depending on the situation, on the person, is a defense thing. If you are at war with some country, or if there is a serious threat of attack on this country, maybe certain important areas will have to be taken away by the defense areas. But apart from that, I don't believe that the corporates or the miners have any right to take away anything from us. Now, the penalty for mining in this proposed draft EIA 2020 is 5,000 rupees a day. Now, I will tell you some very shocking statistics. In a very small mine will take out at least 40-50 trucks. Very small mine will take 40-50 trucks of material out of a mine every day. Every dumper carries a profit of 80,000 rupees for the miner. 80,000 rupees. What does the government get? 600 rupees. Now for an 80,000 per truck, and he's sending out 50 trucks, he's making close to 4 lakhs or 40 lakhs every day. For him, 5,000 is no big deal. He'll happily pay it and continue to make money. So these kind of fines which have been imposed, they think that the youth of this country has no intelligence. When 17 lakh people objected, they have sought to thrash it by saying it has come through software generation. Now, software generation will not carry your name and email ID on it unless you agree to it. And if there is there can be a random case, but not 17 lakh. And there is no attempt made to involve the people of India in this process. That is my 78,000 letters were sent to industrialists by the ministry. 78,000 letters to individual industries asking them, guys, what do you want? Or kya karu aapke liye main? And they don't have the time to reply to one email of yours. They don't have time to reply to one RTI of yours. It is not environment. It is the entire country's ecosystem and natural resources and the very framework of this country that is crumbling. And people need to wake up now. It is already late. We are going into complete anarchy and complete destruction. We have to get up now. Yeah, Mr. Kumar. You are muted. Mr. Kumar.
Mr. Bhavesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Mr. Bhavesh, pretty strong words from Mr. Stalin that it's a completely pro-corporate environmental policy that is being unfolded.
Most of the
You are based in Jharkhand. आप झारखंड में बेस्ड हैं अभी इस वक्त. वहाँ पे माइनिंग को लेकर के भी बड़ी समस्या है और जो क्लियरेंस दिया जा रहा है जिसमें कहा जा रहा है कि आप अब काम शुरू कर दीजिए, क्लियरेंस बाद में होगा, इन्वायरमेंटल असेसमेंट जो होगा वो बाद में होगा. तो फिर आप जैसे लोग जो वहाँ ग्राउंड पे काम कर रहे हैं उनके सामने क्या मतलब सॉल्यूशन क्या है? आपके हिसाब से क्या सॉल्यूशन हो सकता है इसका?
Actually, sir, I am working as I have more than 23 years working the EIA studies for different sectors, power plant and mining and highways. The thing is, questions come, they are diluting it because earlier it was the process that you have to come with a comprehensive proposal. Earlier, what was happening if you are coming for the clearance for the power plant, then what was happening that if you got the power plant clearances, then you will go for the mining and the forest land, etc. You will say that no, I have got the clearances for the power plant, so you give me the clearance for the mining area, and then you will say that the MGR, merry-go-round railway, and the pipeline, etc., approach road, they require and the impact was not comprehensive. The notification MOEF notified that you should go with the comprehensive proposal. Now they are diluting that you go with the help of in the part or without clearance you can develop the project, and they are exempting the other projects also. The if you remember that during winter season when NCR region faces air pollution problem, then they said that no, construction work will not be carried out. Now they are exempting it from the clearance process, environmental clearance process. It is highly destructive to the environment, detrimental to the environment. This proposal is. And the second one is also now they are saying that the land is not clear. You can go for the proposal and you give the some credible proof and notification, etc. Even you at the ground, what is happening if they have accepted the compensation amount, etc. After that, they can create problem that no, I need more money, etc. And when you are saying that without getting land, you will start work, what will happen? And then you will do the EIA. It is not, I think it will be highly detrimental and not substantive. And there is some sectors like railway, etc. One meeting was held on 1st August 1919, 2000, 1st August 2019 in MOEF, and they asked the consultants to give their opinion. And in that meeting, we have given the opinion, but that was not mentioned. They have not incorporated in this draft notification. And what will happen, I don't know. But they should consider even railway and transmission line also. Even World Bank and EDB multilateral funding agencies are considering this for environmental clearance of EIA report they need. But this is being exempted from the this MOEF notification. And other your guidelines are also there that your industry should be about 500 meter from the highway, from the railways, and from the high flood line. But this was the guideline. The ministry was what doing that some projects, if it is coming in the high flood line, like Bart thermal power plant in Bihar, this is the flood plain. The plant is located in the flood plain. It is not from the Howrah Delhi railway line, from even 300 meter away from that line, and the NH is also there. about 50 to 100 meter away from the power plant. So it was being violated. You should go for the stringent measures. Rather going to stringent measures, you are diluting it. People will take the advantage of that, and it will adverse effectively the environment and our environmental conservation measures.
Okay, okay, Mr. Bhaveshji, hold on to your thoughts. If you have time, then I will come back to you. Abhilasha, stringent measures needs to be in place, but the laws are being diluted, is what Bhaveshji has said. How do you look at it?
Hello. I think, sir, one more thing we really need to understand here is that the new EIA draft 2020, which has also exempted the public hearing, and one does not need to go into the technicalities of environmental draft 2020. This law is nothing but an attempt to facilitate corporate mining companies and the builders. We already know this, and the previous speakers has already said in their words. And we also know that the most of the regulatory bodies in our countries have been manageable. And what stood in the process of EIA and what held its sanctity was the requirement for conducting a public hearing. And this is the biggest takeaway. And that is why in the EIA notification 2020, it takes away the power from Adivasi tribals and the forest dwelling communities, I'm so sorry, by reducing the space available for public participation. Now, public participation is very crucial and help communities to get information about the project that is going to affect their life, going to affect the livelihood, going to affect the entire resources they are dependent upon from the generations. And I think if you try to understand not just EIA but the different laws that has been uh, uh, carried by this government, even the previous government, that the land acquisition bill or the Forest Amendment Act that came in 2017, and then finally Environmental Draft 2020. The problem and the solution lies in both. The biggest hurdle for the government and this company was the public hearing, the people's voice, that people were there to question, to go to court, and people were there, they were fighting. Not just in the Chhattisgarh or the Jharkhand, all over the India, we could see that the tribal peoples, the Adivasis have been struggling against this MNCs, against these mining companies. And therefore, it is one of the most strongest part of the EIA. The most strongest part of the EIA was the public hearing. And to dismantle that, by dismantling that, they have basically dismantled the entire voice of people, which was hardly being heard. So I think uh, uh, when we talk about EIA draft 2020, it is very much necessary to stand with the voices which have been struggling in order to save this environment, and we clearly see that the biggest fear in this government is of the public participation. What if people come out? What if people understand? And that is why this draft has not come in any local language other than English. And that is why historically, whenever such kind of project have been implemented, what they did is not following the public hearing processes. There are irregularities, there are illegalities in the entire process, and this is biggest fear in government and in the corporate company, and that is why uh, uh, the EIA draft take away the right to talk. When there is no discussion, how do you expect people are going to talk about it? So I think this is very much important to uh, uh, to reclaim that right, to reclaim that voice, and to reclaim that right to talk about what is happening in and around us. And yeah, that's what I think for now.
Okay, Abhilasha, thanks so much. Uh, Let me take this to Colonel Chepudira. People's voice is being ignored, as Abhilasha has argued. Tribals, Adivasis are struggling. Their voices, their struggles are being ignored and dismantled. There is a, as I was speaking to you earlier, there's man and animal conflict, and then there is nature and man conflict. In that context, how do you look at this law?
Yes, Abhilasha brought out certain very pertinent points. I want to touch upon two very strong pillars of democracy. One is the judiciary and other is an independent media. And I was quite shocked and that there were hundreds and hundreds of hours devoted to Sushant Rajput's case on the prime TV channels, but not a minute, not 1 minute on EA. So I got through to one of my contacts, Ms. Priya Somaya in Delhi, and she reached out to Rajdeep Sardesai, and he did manage to put out half an hour program. That's and every channel is only about Sushant Rajput. It's a very, seems to be a very convenient smoke screen to hide what else is going wrong in this country. That is point one. So we must continue to try and put pressure on our prime TV channels and on our national newspapers. But at the same time, to reach out to the locals, to the non-Hindi speaking, the Adivasis and so on, everybody watches TV. I think we must try and start influencing the local TV channels, which come out in, the local languages, in Kannada, Oriya, and Bengali and so on. We must make this a movement, take this movement to the people through media, and we can do it only through the local channels and not through the national channels. That is point one. The second, we talk about Adivasis' rights and everybody's rights. And for everything, the judiciary has been a pillar of strength. Even for man-animal conflict. We have gone to court, we will again go to court. But what will happen, and we must plan for it and counter it, is that with majority, the present political dispensation, with majority in both the houses of parliament, we can bring in ordinances, they can change the law itself. When the law itself is changed, there is no cause of action. You will go to court for what? That they have changed the law. So I think one is we have to make it a people's movement. We have to make better use of the local media channels. And the other is that we must look at how we can prevent the laws of this country being changed in the so-called ease of doing business. And like somebody said, and I written an article in Indian Express, you have a vaccine for COVID sometime coming around the corner, but there will be no such vaccine for climate change once we have crossed the tipping point. So I think this is a very, and I want to add one more thing. I mean, we can't only talk about the problems, we have to talk about the solutions. I've given a few, going to the local media and things like that. Now, I think the one person, the senior person in this country who could make a difference is Mr. Jairam Ramesh. There is one person who may make a difference. So I think it is not possible for me to get an appointment with the Honorable Prime Minister. I think Mr. Jairam Ramesh to take a delegation of concerned senior politicians, go to the Prime Minister and explain to him. Maybe our Honorable Prime Minister has not been explained enough. His advisor is Mr. Javadekar. So I think this is something, I have met Mr. Ramesh sometime. I will contact him again and request him, sir, please take a delegation, meet the Honorable Prime Minister and make him understand.
We tried to get both Mr. Prakash Javadekar and Jairam Ramesh, but they had some other engagements, so they couldn't make it to the program. But Viblendu, in your assessment, finally, as it is now, it's a draft proposal. But what is actually you're foreseeing is going to happen? You have listened to all the panelists and their concerns and everything. What are your thoughts?
I'm very pessimistic on this, in the sense I don't expect that the government is actually going to take into account anything that has been written in those 17 lakh emails. Government will do what they want to do because government is funded by people who want them to do this. So eventually it's just a hogwash that they would create, and they'll say, as you know, there will be, if there'll be an Indian Express article that will say EIA's draft is bad, there'll be an Op India or a postcard article that will actually say EIA is good. So, there'll be a right wing and a left wing, and they don't understand that our air and water is not right wing and left wing. Everyone, our planet is, or our India's environment is not linked to anybody's political ideology. As all of us breathe the same and drink the same, and have asthma and have issues in our lung and everywhere else in that sense. So I'm pretty pessimistic about the fact that anything will happen vis-a-vis law. But I'm very, very optimistic about one thing, that imagine the kind of voice from the ground up that we've actually heard from the young people on a boring topic called EIA. In the sense, it's not something which is, it's not flashy, it's not PUBG, or I don't know what is PUBG, but whatever. It's not one of your high fashion, high traction, Facebook, Instagram thing. It's slightly complicated in terms of numbers. But if we actually had so many people, my only hope is that Sarkar chahe EIA ka draft bana bhi le, but citizens will have to continue this battle irrespective of wherever the law goes, because these battles are very, very localized. Irrespective of what the form of law is, citizens will have to stand up and we'll have to fight. As in, it's okay. With law, we fought. Without law, we'll fight. Because, a lot of these things that have actually happened, the issue in our country is that there have been solid laws too, but we still have had disasters, right? As an Environment Protection Act, 1986, in a way, post-Bhopal would ideally mean there should not be any Bhopals. We've had at least 100 Bhopals since 1984, in that sense, in some way or the other. As many people have been crippled for life in that sense. So I would say that citizens will have to be strong. I see a very, very strong uprising. I think that the stakeholders who are actually being taken out of this entire public consultation process, because the government or this notification says citizens will not be asked to ask questions on thing beyond material environment. So you can't ask about health, you can't ask about social impact. And the other is which citizen qualifies. So tomorrow you and I can't fight for the tribal of Narmada Bachao Andolan or of the flood affected areas of Assam because I'm not a stakeholder. So these are very, very stupid things that have actually come. I think people will fight. People have fought in the past. And, this as I think Colonel Sir said, and Stalin also, that this battle is not just about EIA. It's beyond EIA. It's about, it's what forestry, the way we're actually looking at coal. Like imagine today, this morning, I read the news that coal and coal, our dependence on coal, and how India wanted to be rid of coal energy or thermal energy. Since 2017 is, we've been extending the deadline, and they want the deadline to be extended by 2 more years. They will keep giving this masala that metro is good, as in fact in Delhi, they're going to construct more metro. And I hear that they're going to take certain parts of Ridge to build this thing. I have been serving on the Ridge Management Board of Delhi in the past. Right now, government of Delhi doesn't have a Ridge Management Board. So what they do is that they dismantle any of these boards that can actually ask these questions. And then they will do, the word that I was missing was fait accompli, Stalin. So, you go so far and say, ab to ho gaya, ab kya kare? Loss of public money, fait accompli, ab to ho gaya, last minute ho chuka hai. So we'll have to fight, and I see a more strong civil society, civil uprising in the country, and people will not give up, and people will actually respond very well. And I think the tribals, the Dalits, the women of our country, the farmers of our country will show this government or any political party that you cannot play with life and livelihood and well-being. Eventually, people will realize and people will fight back. And that has actually happened in the past, and it will happen again. Maybe we'll die by then. Maybe the rate at which our degradation is happening and the rate at which people like who are on this panel are fixing the problem, उस स्पीड में बहुत अंतर है. हम सिर्फ 5 मीटर ठीक कर पाते हैं और सरकार 50 किलोमीटर पहाड़ काट लेती है और जंगल काट लेती है. So there's a huge gap of in effort, positive effort and negative effort. But this battle should go on because we don't have a choice.
Well said, Viblendu. We do not have a choice. The battle must go on. As you said, air and water have no ideologies, have to be practical about and priorities about the concerns of the people, lives of the tribals, minorities, women, urban poor, and even larger citizenry is at stake. And that must be taken care of before given priority to corporates and industry and all that at the cost of the health, at the cost of the wildlife, at the cost of the climate. As you said, the battle will go on. We don't know. It's a draft proposal. How much will be incorporated? How much will be challenged in the court? But we will continue this debate in the coming. For the moment, Mr. Stalin, Vimlendu Jha, Mr. Bhavesh Singh, Abhilasha Srivastav, Colonel Chepudira, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. Next week, we will be back again at the same time on a new topic. For the moment, thank you so much, all of
Thank
you,
you.
and all the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.